Hey everybody, John here from the Esports Department, as usual, going over tonight's LPL and LCK slate for the 20th. Uh, this one I really quite like. There's been a few recently that I haven't liked very much, and this is one where I'm really finding it to be pretty enjoyable as a slate. So we start off with the Freak of Freaks minus 190 against Team Dynamics plus 140. So no one really expected Dynamics to come out and win their first matchup. Afrika looked pretty good in their first matchup. I think rightful favorite for sure. Dynamics probably are not going to continue making much of a splash. Just going over, I'm going to do the rosters for LCK while we're going over it. Dynamics is pretty straightforward. They don't change at all, really. Guger, Diakdam, Kuzan, Beyond, and Rich. A lot of these guys have been in the LCK one way or another before, or been in Challengers Korea for a while. Rich, for some people who don't know, is arguably the best Heart of the Swarm player of all time. Another version of a game that's kind of like League, and switched over to League. Team's pretty good. I think they'll still take wins from people, but I don't think they're going to be a top contender in the league. Afrika looked top contender level in their first series. Let's look at Afrika. Running pretty much the standard lineup, except I wasn't expecting this Ben play for sure. I thought it was going to be Jelly. Fly and All In was always kind of up in the air, but I definitely thought that they would play Jelly in the first series, but they played Ben. They got a pretty dominant victory. Mystic looked insane, which is exactly what we want to see. Mystic was insane in the LPL. When I heard he was going to the LCK, I really thought he would turn up the heat on some of these LCK teams, and I'm glad to see he had a good first series. A lot of talent on this roster. Definitely like Afrika to win that one, but Dynamics probably going to maintain being an extremely low-owned team as far as GPPs and stuff go. Next up, T1 and HLE, two teams with the same record again, but a vast difference in quality. So T1, they don't change up their lineup very much. I'll go down to them real quick just so you can see. Cuz and Kana are the only ones that have any sub potential for the most part. Elm and Roach both played sometimes last season. For the most part, it was just to get Elm practice. Roach played a little bit more at the beginning of the season, and they've messed around with him occasionally, but I would guess it's a huge percent chance that Cuz and Kana are playing, especially since the team lost their first game. They're not going to be in mess around and get people practice mode, I don't think. I think they're going to play with what they think is their best roster, which is Cuz and Kana as of right now. T1 a rightful monster-sized favorite, and HLE is made even less appealing by what they did last series. Show that off. So they played the same mid and bot lane. I don't expect you'll see Viper and Lehens ever go anywhere. Viper and Lehens played together as a duo for a very long time on Griffin. I think they're going to stay being the bot lane for this team for sure. Miryu might come in at some point for Lava, but I think Lava is mostly going to be the starter. The big problem is what we had in that first series. Haru gets subbed out for CAD and then back to Haru again for Game 3. And then in the top lane, Kuve started and Dudu came in and played Game 2 and 3. Really unfortunate. The worst part is I would not be at all surprised to see them start Kuve again in this next series, in which case you're just going to be left always wondering if there's going to be subs. I would expect to see Kuve and Haru starting again against T1, but then you don't know what's going to happen in between games. I hate teams that do mid-game subs. I don't mind teams that sub in between matches, but I think mid-series subs for the most part are just bad. They're mostly to try to make management feel like they're making a change without actually changing the game plan or anything that matters. So I'm not a fan of the move, but it makes HLE even less appealing for people. Going into the LPL games, really funny because we have two teams that haven't won a match and two teams that are undefeated. So this makes for a really fun little slate. OMG and DMO. If I had to say which of these two teams has looked better this season, it's pretty close. OMG's last couple matches have looked a lot better than their first two matches. DMO is bringing in a new look. Let me go over to their roster real quick, and we'll show you that. So DMO is bringing in... Oh, let me get rid of the people that aren't playing from them. I was using them as stand-ins a minute ago, but... There we go. Okay, so Chalitzi is coming in the top lane. Very bizarre. DMO's top laner is their best player by a lot. Natural, I don't know if they're planning on trading him or if they just think maybe he wants, like, there's a personality issue because he wants to be played around or something like that line. But Natural's their best player, and they're taking him out for Chalitzi, who used to play for Vici Gaming, I believe, and we saw as a backup a few times and was not super exciting, but we haven't seen him in an extended role, so who knows. And then they're bringing in Zubin at AD carry. They had already started this season by bringing in a new AD carry. Gala was their old one. They brought in Helper, and then now they're taking out Helper, and they're going to try out Zubin. I will say I've leaned towards the idea that these younger guys coming up from the lower leagues are actually better performers a lot of the time than the guys that were like lower level LCK or LPL players. I think the young guys coming in are often better than them. Just a generational way that sports work. So you might actually give them a little bit of a boost. The thing that worries me is that Chalitzi sub. I really wish they hadn't put Chalitzi in for Natural. Like, Natural's really, really good. Sub 2 other people. Get Twill out of there. He hasn't been exciting. Xiao Peng's good enough. I think they could probably leave him. But, yeah, I would have gotten rid of somebody else. Get rid of Mitsuki if you need to. Get rid of Helper if you need to. Get rid of Twilla if you need to. But I wouldn't have gotten rid of Natural personally, as far as for this series anyway. DMO, a rightful underdog. Probably not this big of an underdog in reality. I think they're probably a little bit closer to even money. They're probably being a little bit underrated because they have some new players. But, like I said, I think the younger guys are going to be just fine. OMG has looked really pretty bad, especially SMLZ and Cold in the bottom lane. Icon has pretty much looked like Icon's always looked. Curse is pretty good. The jungle with Hacker and the bot lane has looked pretty weak for OMG. So you could go either way on this game. I don't think it really projects to be a super high-scoring affair either, but we'll take a look at it in a minute when we look at the scoring. Just kind of funny and interesting having the two undefeated teams and the two teams that have not won yet. LGD against Top Esports. Top Esports has definitely looked the better of these two teams, even though it's 3-0 and 3-0 between these two teams. I think that LGD is a rightful large underdog. Top Esports has looked like literally the best team in the world in the last like 2 or 3 months. LGD has looked hot with their new lineup, but they've lost the game here and there, and I'm not convinced that they're on the level of Top Esports yet. This series, I'm guessing, probably has a pretty reasonably high total, so this is probably a decent spot to get your action in on one team or the other. The underdogs on this slate are not exactly like super plentiful and good, so it makes some sense to try to mess around with LGD maybe if the series is going to be high scoring. Maybe they come out and upset Top Esports here. For ownership, I know for sure HLE is going to be last. Like 100% HLE is going to be the lowest owned team. Not only is their roster impossible to predict, but they are not going to beat T1 either. Dynamics, I'm going from bottom to top this time. I'm trying to decide if I think people will be on Dynamics after they picked up an upset in the first matchup. There's some decent chance of that. I think the LPL underdogs are probably likely to be higher owned, so I'm going to guess that Dynamics is still the second lowest owned team. Probably followed. DMO maybe? OMG projects pretty lowly in general. It should be the underdogs again here. I don't think there's an underdog that everybody's going to be on like some of these slates. So I'm going to guess DMO. I think people might try out LGD. They're kind of the new hotness. Although people don't like going against Knight and stuff either. Let's go DMO higher. We'll go like this. And then as far as the favorites, definitely I think OMG will be the lowest owned favorite. They've not looked good, and I don't think the matchup projects that well. Afrika Freaks maybe next, with T1, and I don't think anybody's going to beat out Top Esports. They do look like the best team in the world. I think most people recognize that. They're in probably one of the bloodier matchups of the day. They should be your higher-owned team for the slate. I would guess it comes out looking like this. You might put OMG down below DMO. There could be a swap-up between DMO and LGD here, maybe. LGD might be a little bit higher-owned because their matchup's a little bit better. Dynamics maybe might leapfrog somebody because they're the best price as far as the underdogs go. But my guess would be this, and I think it's reasonably accurate. Let me refresh this so we can get rid of these players that they're porting into the other leagues real quick. Okay. Let's take a look at the favorites. OMG and Afrika and Top and T1. So when sorting by projection, we get to see 369 showing up first. So Top Esports, Afrika, T1, and then OMG projecting even lower than the LCK teams. This doesn't surprise me. OMG has not been a very bloody team. Neither is DMO. Playing each other. Not looking good for them. Top Esports and OMG coming up next. The LCK team's a little bit lower down. In the mid lane, it's the LPL again with the LCK on bottom. Same here, LPL and LCK with Top Esports leading the way. And same thing at the support position. So other than the top lane, it's the LPL teams on top. In the top lane, Keen gets the bump. Keen's a very high-scoring top laner. So it looks like you're going to want to try to get your points from Top Esports and OMG. T1 seems like a fadeable team. They're showing up lowest projection for winners. It makes sense to me. Playing against HLE, they could easily just run them over. So I think I would consider fading SKT. They're also a very beloved team. A lot of people like to play them. So I think fading T1 makes the most sense as far as favorites. Afrika and Dynamics could actually be a pretty bloody series. Teams coming up from Challengers Korea have a bit of a bloodier mindset than LCK teams, and Afrika is a very volatile team that can score a lot of points. So I think I actually kind of like Afrika more than OMG in general, even though they're going to be pretty close in the scoring here. Looking at the underdogs, I'm guessing that LGD will project the highest in most of these. LGD, DMO with HLE and Dynamics at the bottom. Dynamics actually projecting pretty weak. They are still getting, we talked about this last video, but they are still getting the average team treatment as we keep adding their stats in. So I would rate Dynamics maybe probably higher than, well, if HLE actually wins their match, they should score pretty well. But I would rate Dynamics a little bit better than maybe we're seeing. And it's pretty much the same story over here. LGD and DMO, for the most part, projecting the highest. LGD in particular projecting the highest in their win. DMO next. Seems like some kind of sexy pairings for GPPs might be something like LGD Afrika or LGD OMG, Dynamics and Top. Dynamics and OMG. Those seem like, DMO and Afrika or DMO and Top. Trying to stay away from T1 because their ownership probably is going to over-reflect what their scoring potential is. Let's take a look at cash games. I think for cash games you're only going to have a couple options here. We're going to have to play some combination of T1 and Top. I don't even know that I would want to include OMG in there. I just don't know if you can really put who's going to win on OMG versus DMO. OMG's probably terribly mentally right now as well. Another season where they had a lot of guys with name value and aren't getting anything done. I think I'd actually rather look at Afrika than OMG in my cash lineups. So let's see what Top and T1 comes up with. A 576 expectation support captain lineup. Fits pretty easily though. You get 4 Top Esports players and then a couple people from T1. What happens if we switch over to Afrika? If we play T1 and Afrika, that's an 80 carry captain lineup, 3 and 3. And if you do Top and Afrika, you get jungle captain with 4 Top Esports. 599 for that one. Only 558 with T1. Yeah, so the highest expectation of the possible cash lineups, I think, is Top Esports and Afrika. It's a jungle captain lineup instead of the 80 carry you get with T1, but T1 just projects so lowly. I think it makes the most sense to go with this lineup here for cash. I think Afrika is very likely to win their match. Afrika is very, very good. They can get in a mental pit sometimes, but they won their first match, and I think going up against Dynamics, they should be looking pretty impressive. So a 4-2 Karsa captain with 369 Knight and Uyanja, and then Mystic and Spirit as the AFS players. You could maybe try to lower. I'm trying to think if there's a way to lower your exposure to subs. Uyanja could maybe come out, and you could play Jackie Love, but I wouldn't like that lineup as much, and I don't think we're going to see subs here. Spirit can technically come out for Dread as well, but he's played well, and I don't think they're going to lose a game in this series. This one makes the most sense to me, I think. The Karsa captain for Top Esports with Afrika Freaks. If I was playing on FanDuel, I keep sometimes forgetting to mention FanDuel. I'm sorry, guys. I just don't play on there, and I forget about it sometimes when I'm making these videos. Keep reminding me. I'll keep trying to put a little bit of FanDuel something or other in here. I think it's pretty clear what you want to do on FanDuel, which is get SKT Team if you can do it. Sorry. If it's possible to get SKT team in there with these guys. Let's have a look. I don't have the projections up for FanDuel, but if I take just down to top esports and Africa, and we take out the guys that aren't going to play, and we got to take them out of the lineups as well. Dread and Holland, SS, huge jelly. I think what you might do is add T1 team in here if they're not that expensive. Yeah, they're only 100 more than top esports, and they just make a really, really great play here, I think. So let me mess around with it and see if we can get a lineup that works. Oh god, I took out the one team I actually wanted to use. See if this is something that's doable. Yeah, you can get Fly Captain with 4 top esports, Spirit in the jungle, and then T1 team. That's fantastic. That's what I would nail that up there. Yeah, 4 top esports, 2 Africa, and T1 team, easy. Definitely interested in that. And it fits just with the lineup that you'd be playing on DK as well. So, pretty good look at that slate. I think the ownerships are probably pretty accurate for this one. I had some big questions about last night's LPL LCK, and it turned out kind of nobody was right. Looking through all the different things that people thought might happen, it was just kind of a weird set of ownerships we had last slate. But I'm going to go back and watch the rest of this LEC here, and I'll be back for tomorrow's LEC breakdown later in the afternoon. Talk to you later, guys.